You want to die for this planet? Fine! What's 17 more years? I can always start again. Make another kid. You're fighting so you can watch everyone around you die! Think, Mark! Everyone and everything you know will be gone! What will you have after 500 years?
You, Dad. I still have you.
So after what seems like an eternity, Invincible has finally returned with a bang, and I cannot wait to see even more this coming Friday. But before I go any further, I have to let you guys know this video will contain spoilers for episode 1 of season 2 of Invincible, so viewer discretion is advised. Season 2 of Invincible has started off with something really interesting. In episode 1, we get introduced to the multiverse via a man named Angstrom Levy, who I mentioned in my previous Invincible video is someone really pivotal to the story of Mark Grayson. When the show starts, we are greeted with a pretty violent sight. The Immortal and Mark are going at it, and the reason is left up to interpretation at first. Mark says he's trying to save lives and that the Immortal doesn't trust him. It's easy to assume that the reason he doesn't trust him is because of his fight with Omniman. After all, their battle resulted in the deaths of thousands, but we soon learn that that isn't exactly the case, because in the opening sequence, we aren't even in our reality at all. It's an alternate dimension. In this world, Mark sided with Omniman and helped take over the world for the Viltrum Empire. We get a look at what could have happened had Mark given in to his dad, and just how terrible things would have been. Humanity is in shambles, and the world's greatest heroes are either villains or shadows of their former selves. We see what remains of the Guardians of the Globe. They're now resistance fighters, who can't do much to stand up against Mark and Omniman. And we even see just how brutal Mark is in this new world. The total disregard for human life is such a contrast from what we are used to. It makes you wonder what happened to Mark to make him this way in this alternate dimension. Why is he so okay with being evil? Why is he so nonchalant about paralyzing people? Does it have something to do with Adam Eve, whom he paralyzes in the episode? The Mark of this universe seems to have a fascination with Eve, to the point where he doesn't want to kill her, but, as I mentioned before, paralyzes her so he can visit her, which is ridiculous. And we call Omni-Man the bad guy because he thinks Debbie's a pet. And I can't help but wonder if this says something about our Mark. Could we potentially see him take an interest in Adam Eve? I know some people will probably enjoy that, considering there aren't too many Amber fans out there after season 1, but regardless, it seems Adam Eve is a pivotal character in Invincible's story, especially since she literally has her own episode explaining her origins and whatnot, but moving on. We get introduced to a guy named Angstrom Levy, the guy who seemingly kickstarts season 2 and is going to be the new main antagonist. He has the power to access alternate dimensions and even says that in most universes, Mark Grayson is evil and sided with his father. So you can't help but wonder why that is. He does say that the smallest differences cause change, so what changed for these alternate Marks? Was it the way they were raised, the people in their lives? There could be an infinite number of reasons when you tackle things like the multiverse. Angstrom is on a mission to make a utopia, and his way of doing this is by gathering all the knowledge of his alternate selves in his one body and mind. At first, it does sound kind of fishy since in a lot of shows and stories where we always have people who claim to be out for the betterment of everyone, but then it turns out that in reality they're just selfish people. Angstrom kind of falls into this because while he does actually want to elevate the world, he does have an ego. He compares himself to Prometheus, who gave fire to the humans, but he leaves out that part where Prometheus was actually punished for doing that by being strapped to a rock and having his liver eaten every day by an eagle. I also can't help but think of Icarus as well, the boy with waxed wings who flew too close to the sun. Angstrom, like Icarus, in his attempts to reach new heights ends up getting burned, but granted, he burns himself trying to save Invincible, who in typical fashion is getting the snot beaten out of him. This, though, is much more than a burn. Angstrom released the Mauler twins and enlists their help so he can create his utopia by gaining the knowledge of his alternate selves. When Invincible interrupts and won't listen, he summons other variations of the Mauler twins to stop him, but they take a little too much joy in their job. In trying to contain all the knowledge of his alternate selves and interrupting the process to save Invincible's life, Angstrom is left deformed both physically and mentally. His memories are scrambled, and he can't tell which is which. The mindset that seems to be shining through at the moment is that of the Angstrom Levy we saw at the beginning of the episode, in the alternate dimension where Mark and Omni-Man took over. This Angstrom hates Invincible for destroying his world and killing millions, so now, after the failed knowledge and memory transference, his hate has taken over the originally egotistical but well-intentioned Angstrom from our world. And it's clear that this is going to be a problem. A villain who can access any dimension and hates the main character? That is a disaster waiting to happen. Speaking of which, Mark is currently being put through the ringer when it comes to life itself. To say Mark is in a bad place right now is an understatement, and can you blame him? His dad lied to him and his mother for years, his entire life. He said he was sent to Earth as a protector and hero, but really, he was a warmongering conqueror the entire time. He called his mom a pet and then nearly killed him because he wouldn't go along with the Viltrumites' plan for Earth. Mark is having a crisis, feeling like he failed because of all the lives that were lost in his fight with his dad. But in the grand scheme, considering the alternate possibilities that could have happened, Mark actually saved a lot of people. But still, those he didn't weigh pretty heavily on him. And it really sucks to see Mark like this, because you have to remember, despite the spandex, despite being a super-powered hero, he's still a kid. Only a month, a few weeks have passed since his fight with Nolan, so this is really fresh on his mind. It's safe to say he's absolutely traumatized. Then it also doesn't help that he has to live a double life, go back to school and essentially act like everything's fine. He has to go along with this fake story that his dad died in an explosion too, while also worrying if he got into college or not. But life isn't done throwing punches at Mark. After season 1, Mark has a new fear, and that's being his dad. For years, ever since he was a kid, all he wanted to do was be just like his father, and now his father has revealed himself to be a monster, so he wonders if he'll ever end up being the same way. We see how badly this is affecting Mark. Even when he should be grieving and taking a break, he still wants to help people, save them, make up for what he deems as his failure, and we even see this towards the end of the episode when he stops Levy's experiment. He feels like he failed because he couldn't stop people from dying. Mark is the type of guy who fights when he has to, but he's really a gentle soul at heart. Once again, he feels like people die because of him, and I think this is going to be a very key part for his character as he moves forward this season. Mark sees himself as a failure and doesn't want to be seen as a monster like his father. So far, it seems like no one actually thinks he is one, unless you count the Immortal. He's suspicious of Mark, and I can't say I blame him either. The last time he trusted a Viltrumite claiming to be a hero, he killed his entire team and then murdered him twice. Brutally, I might add. So it's natural that he's skeptical of Mark. But is it wise to treat this mentally fragile kid like a ticking time bomb? You treat him like a monster, and who knows, maybe that's who he'll become. Maybe he's just one bad day away from becoming that Mark we saw at the beginning of the episode. If that happens, we may just be screwed. But either way, the season is setting up to be pretty hectic. Aside from Mark, the multiverse seems like it's going to be a big part of the season thanks to the meddlings of Angstrom and his newfound hate for the boy he originally wanted to save. Could we potentially see dimensions collide? Perhaps Mark having to face another version of himself, and maybe even his father, considering we don't know where he went after season 1. Maybe that could help give Mark some closure, some peace of mind, facing what could be deemed as the worst parts of himself personified, and overcoming them. Regardless though, episode 1 was absolutely amazing, and it's great to be back in this universe after basically 3 years. This is definitely going to be a really dark time for Mark Grayson as he tries to balance a normal life with being a hero and picking up the pieces that his father left behind, while he doubts himself along with others like the Immortal. He's going to take a lot of hits, and if he can keep getting back up, then I guess he really is invincible.
Huh. I guess he really is invincible.